morning and welcome to the June 8th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. My name is Chris Ramey and I'm the chair of the Eugene Planning Commission. Thank you for joining us in this remote meeting format we're using in response to Governor Brown's Stay Home, Save Lives order. This format enables the Planning Commission to meet, hear from the community, and take care of business while keeping its members, staff, and the public safe. Today, our meeting will begin with public comment, followed by deliberations and possible action on the Laurel Ridge PUD, PT 18-3, and then we will have a work following up on our retreat, some work items. There are several housekeeping announcements and instructions related to the meeting format I need to take care of. Thank you for your patience while I work my way through them. Anyone wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by following the access instructions listed on the agenda for this meeting. For those who join the meeting via computer, device, or phone, your microphone, webcam, and phone are automatically muted when you enter the meeting as an attendee. If you wish to participate during the public comment portion of the meeting and haven't already done so, please raise your virtual hand now to join the speakers queue in one of two ways. For those viewing the meeting on a computer, laptop, or other device, click once on the hand icon. For those listening to the meeting on a phone, press *9. When the public comment begins, our meeting moderator will announce the next two speakers at a time. When it's your turn, the moderator will announce your name and unmute your microphone. Public comment is limited to 10 minutes, so your time to speak will be based on the number of people signed up to speak. I want to thank everyone again for their patience, flexibility, and good humor as we work within this new virtual meeting format. As always, feel free to contact staff if there is testimony you were not able to provide or wish to get to us in a different manner. Now, our first agenda item is public comment. And I don't know if we do not see any hands raised over there. Do we have anyone *9ing us, Amy?
I don't have any hands raised.
No hands raised. Okay. So I will move us on from public comment then to item B on our agenda, which is deliberations and possible actions on the Laurel Ridge PUD, PDT 18-3. And Nick is here to walk us through that. Take it away, Nick.
Thank you, Chairman Ramey. I'm going to share screen and bear with me a second here. There we go. Okay, so we're here for the appeal of Laurel Ridge PUD, and this is an appeal of the hearings official's decision on approval for a planned unit development, and this is our second deliberation meeting. And if we need to refer to anything in tonight's discussion, I've got these slides with the vicinity map so we can see the area here in blue. That's the Laurel Ridge PUD and the surrounding area, and then the zoning map, and then a version of the actual development. Just for the record, this is a 374 multifamily unit, 2 single family lot development, about 98 acres with about 60 of those acres preserved in what is called a forest management area. I think everybody's well versed in all the other details about this, so I'm not going to go through it. But just to backtrack slightly, the hearings official held a public hearing back on, we had it back in March, and then on April 22nd of this year, issued a decision approving the PUD. The Laurel Hill Valley citizens filed an appeal on May 10th that involved 2 appeal issues, and both of those issues related to EC 98202 that the PUD was in, and that's the criteria that the PUD is consistent with applicable adoptive refinement plan policies. Those 2 policies that apply to this site are the Laurel Hill Plan and the South Hill Study. So on May 18th, we held the public hearing with the Planning Commission, as most of you were, I think, were in that meeting. And you heard a staff presentation, and then you also heard from the applicant's representative and their attorney. And you heard testimony from the Laurel Hill Valley Citizens Attorney and several of their representatives. And then you also heard applicant rebuttal to that. Then on May 24th, we held the first deliberation meeting. You as Planning Commission reviewed the testimony that had come in and found that none of it was new evidence and that all of it was related to the appeal issue. So none of that testimony was rejected. And what we're dealing with is the two appeal issues that were filed or the appeal that was filed that included two issues by the Laurel Hill Valley citizens. The first one at the deliberation hearing you considered was that the hearings official misconstrued the Laurel Hill plan. Basically, this is about allowing a connection from 30th Avenue through the Laurel Hill Valley and over to the Glenwood connector. You discussed this appeal issue, and then you had a straw poll of 5-1 to find that the hearings official did not err regarding this street connection in allowing it, actually, for this development to connect in to the East Ridge, or more recently referred to as East Mountain subdivision via Brackenfern. That's in that subdivision. That's not developed yet, but potentially will be. Tonight, we're here to discuss the second appeal issue, which is that the hearings official misconstrued policies, co-provisions, and other plans related to linkage to park sites and the Ridgeline Trail system. And just to go over this very briefly, because it is a little complicated. In the initial staff report that we provided to the hearings official, we recommended a trail connection that would go from their road that goes through the middle of their project to the properties to the south of this. And based on evidence that was submitted into the record during the open record period by the applicant and a challenge to that requirement, staff reviewed that information, consulted with other staff in our parks, recreation, open space, and also with our city attorney's office, and decided to withdraw the requirement for the trail connection. And you have all of that information that details why we did that. But basically, what it comes down to is, although staff believes this developer should provide such a connection, that the current law does not allow for us to make it a requirement, and that the policy in the South Hills plan is not something that can be enforced. Just want to give a brief look at what the applicant had talked about during this period. If they were required to do a connection, they preferred to do something like this. And this demonstrates the severity of the grade as you go from the road to the south of the property. And you can see the switchbacks here. My mouse is visible. There's I don't know, it might be 40 or 50 foot grade or more, or I mean 40 or 50 foot rise in elevation, maybe more like 60 to get from this point to this point. This property to the south is recently purchased by the city. It's what's referred to now as Black Oak Basin Park. And it is intended to provide that type of the Ridgeline Trail System connection that would connect over to Coryell Ridge and to Moon Mountain Park, and then also allows a connection over to the Ribbon Trail to the west of this development. And then basically I got the site plan up if we want to point to anything specific, but one other thing I want to bring up before I'm done is that we issued a draft order last week. I believe we did that on Friday, along with a short AIS about today's or agenda item summary about tonight's meeting. And on Monday, on further input from our city attorney's office, we provided everybody with a revised draft order and altered some things in there. But basically the fundamental thing that we're saying in there is that the hearings official did not err in this decision. That part didn't change. So I just want to make sure that everybody, all the commissioners, got the revised draft order so that they're reviewing the correct one. Okay. And with that, my presentation is over. And if you need to see any of these, I can put it back up on the screen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Commissioners, any questions for Nick or thoughts about this appeal issue in front of us today? Commissioner Borowski.
Nick, if you could pull up the last slide. The applicants made reference to a shared use path that would serve as the connection. Could you show us where that, where and what that is that they're talking about that would do the connection? You're muted.
Sorry about that. Yep. Do that a lot. I think they're talking about the connection through the street, and they have sidewalks on both sides that are, I think on one side it's 8 feet, 5 feet on the other side. And so that it provides connection through this area, and then potential connection once this area develops over through this area where there is a trail connection that gets you over to Moon Mountain Park. Over in this area, it provides, and it's off the screen here, but it provides a way to get over to the Ribbon Trail fairly easily.
So there is a connection, just for my knowledge, there would be a way to connect from the Ribbon Trail to Moon Mountain Park via their shared use path. The only park that wouldn't be available would be the newest acquisition that the city had with the switchbacks to get up to it. Is that, am I getting that right?
Yeah, I think that's correct. Yeah, this area down here, and actually, if I go back to the first slide, it kind of shows the whole area. Some reason I'm gonna have to stop sharing and share it
Sure.
a different way here. Froze up. Oh, I have it as a PDF, so that should share easier. There we go. So the Ribbon Trail comes, this is Hendricks Park right through here.
Yeah.
And the Ribbon Trail comes right down through here.
Okay.
And this portion of the property connects there. And so their road connection comes in through here, and this area all here, right through here is how you connect to the Ribbon Trail. We recently, while we were in the midst of the hearings official decision, or right prior to that, purchased this chunk of property right through here.
Okay, so at the time that this application was put in, that property that you just referred to, the newly acquired property for the city, wasn't in ownership of the city or Parks and Recreation's master plan. So they couldn't have known about that and wanted to put a connection to that because they didn't even know that that was a park, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you for that information.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. That was one of my questions as well, where the 8-foot shared use path. So that helps me. Commissioner Beeson.
Well, I guess I don't really have a question. I think I want to make a comment or two. And I guess for people listening, I think it's important to say for me, I go through this material pretty carefully. It's been with us for quite a while through a number of meetings, but I tend to go through the hearings official report, go through the items from the appellant and also the applicant. Certainly the staff memo. I spend a good bit of time with the material from both lawyers, also from the appellant and the applicant. And it seems like this one felt pretty clear to me as I sifted through it. And I think Nick talked about it. The hearings official found there are pathways or connections in this development embedded and part of the development that provide called a potential linkage up into the Ridgeline Park system. And I think more importantly, that there isn't anything at all in the existing city standards or in the law or in the land use code that would require the developer or the owner to provide some kind of a pathway to the Ridgeline Park system or to a future Black Oaks Basin Park. So it just, I kind of kept at it and went through the material, but I think it felt pretty clear to me. So I'm going to be looking to support the hearings official decision on it.
Thank you, Commissioner Beeson. I think honestly, maybe a little out of place here. I'll say I followed your path of study exactly, and I came to a very similar, precisely formulated conclusion. So thank you for summarizing what I was going to say. Other commissioners? Commissioner Borowski.
So I would just like to, Lauren, do you want me to make a motion for the straw poll or for appeal item 2?
Commissioner Borowski, I don't think a motion is required for this straw poll. If commissioners are finished talking about it and Commissioner Rainey, as the chair, is ready to call for the straw poll, that's great. I will ask for a motion for adoption of the
So other comments from commissioners at this point? Okay, seeing no interest in that, I will call for a straw poll on appeal item number 2. All those who believe the hearings official did not err in their judgment, show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Thank you, commissioners. And now I believe it's appropriate for a motion on the entire package, which is both appeal issues. And I believe the language, do we have the language in our, let's see, we viewed the record. We voted to affirm the decision of the hearings official, conditionally approving the Lower Ridge PUD. So the motion is to affirm the decision of the hearings official. Yes, Lauren Summers.
Can it be moved to adopt the final order included?
Oh, adopt the final order, yes.
Affirming the decision of the hearings official.
So we have that. Well, that is so much more clear. So we're adopting the final order, which includes affirming the hearings official's decision. Would someone care to make that motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Fragola.
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Isaacson. Anyone want to speak to the motion or anything else? Yes, Commissioner Borowski would like to speak.
Thank you. as I was one of the one person who voted against appeal issue 1, and having seen this issue for some time now over several different land use appeals, but this one in particular, I do believe that the neighbors' contention that no vehicular traffic off of 30th Avenue is something that they've lived with and believed for the last number of years. And so on that reason, I will be voting against this motion.
Okay, any other comments or discussion on the motion that's in front of us? Okay, hearing none, I think I'll go ahead and call for the question. All those in favor of the motion, a show of hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those opposed to the motion, show of hands. 1. 5 to 1. Thank you, commissioners. And with that, I believe we have dispensed with item, what was it? B on our agenda, item B on our agenda. Which leads us straight into item C, not surprisingly. And for that, I believe we have Alyssa here to lead us through, oh, there she is, through our completion of our retreat items.
Excellent. Wasn't sure how much time we had. You guys were very efficient right there. So we have two kind of general topics that one I was going to follow up on since the retreat, and then Ken was going to lead the discussion on the rest of the council communication items. And I thought we could start with those, start with the council communication items. So as you might remember from the retreat, you did talk about, sending a letter or memo to the council with recommendations or discussions, and you've done that one time, at least since the retreat, which with the recent letter on the middle housing project. You also discussed testimony protocols at the retreat, and that left you 3 topics, kind of the buddies, council buddies, annual report, and annual joint meeting. And that doesn't mean we can't talk about other things related to council communication as well, but just wanted to throw those out there. And Commissioner Basin has offered to continue to lead that discussion.
Okay, we have a good bit more time than I was thinking we would have. So there was some material set out in advance, kind of listed. This was really to kind of follow up on the retreat discussion and to talk, as Alyssa just said, we had some items that we were discussing, and what I thought might be what I would suggest as a way through, and we can kind of see what people think, is maybe on the first 2 items, the letter to council and also testimony protocols. We can see if people have things they want to talk about there. And then we can go through the other 3 kind of one at a time and talk through them. And I think the basic idea would be just to go through the material and have people have an opportunity to talk about it a bit, and we can hear the thoughts from each other, and maybe to the extent we can, we could decide on any kind of next steps or a path forward with any of the material, if it makes sense. The other thing I would add, I don't know the origin of all these, and they have some origin, I expect. And maybe to the extent there are people here who have some particular thoughts about it, they may want to talk or kind of lead off, or maybe set the discussion. So I guess what I would do is just start out and see if there's any thing else people want to say about the letter or memo and the recommendations to council. I don't see anything, and I got my system all in order this afternoon so I can actually see if people raise hands. And testimony protocols.
So Alyssa, there are testimony protocols in our bylaws, is that correct? Did you want to share those with the rest of the commission, or
Let me,
just so the new members know what
yep,
is in the bylaws?
let me pop those up real quick.
I don't know if that's what is being regarded to here, but that would be helpful, I think, to have.
Just give me a second. Okay. It says a planning commissioner member who attends a meeting of the city council as an authorized commission representative should follow the following guidelines. The official representative need not speak on every issue referred to the council, but should participate in council discussion when it appears necessary. Representative should answer questions about commission policies if they are addressed to him or her by the council. And the representative should support the commission's majority report and should not present his or her own point of view or that of the minority unless specifically asked. And I'm trying to see if there's anything else. I think that is all. Pretty simple.
Yeah, so for me, and I've had to testify before city council as a representative of the planning commission on a few occasions, and basically it is you testify to whatever the commission's, opinion was, even if you dissented in that opinion. And we had a discussion about this a few years back, where if you do have a dissent and want to talk about it, you can testify, but make it clear that you're testifying on as a private citizen and not as as a member of or not representing the planning commission. And I think that is basically the way that it's been handled in the past. I don't know if that answers the questions of whoever brought this up.
Well, that's helpful. I think that is helpful. The second part is not in the bylaws though. Right, okay. Any comments or?
Tiffany has her.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
That's
thank you.
It's more, I guess it's more of a question. As somebody who regularly interacts with members of council, usually one-on-one, I would be curious, because it's not in the bylaws specifically, but I mean, I've certainly been asked by members of council just about general discussions or whatnot on certain topics that we cover. It doesn't come up very often, but I've definitely been, council has reached out to me and inquired about, what was the discussion or whatever else, if you can summarize what was the issue or whatever, right? So I guess my question would be, what would be the protocol if I'm just speaking as somebody who sits on planning commission and I serve at the pleasure of the city council, and they are asking me, individuals are asking for input or insight. I think that would be a better way to categorize it. I would assume that I'm pretty transparent when those questions do come up, but I would want to know that whether it's the group would like to be informed or whether, I just don't know what is standard, what is expected, what is acceptable. It would be helpful because I do actually engage with council regularly. Not generally because of planning commission, but I certainly, there certainly conversations come up that cross into that realm. So I'd love to hear people's thoughts. Or maybe Lauren has a legal opinion about what is appropriate.
And meet myself just on Commissioner Edwards. So from a legal perspective, the thing that you want to be careful about is exactly what Commissioner Borowski was alluding to. As an individual planning commissioner, you don't have the authority to speak on behalf of or take action on behalf of the body. That's something that the body has to do unless the planning commission as a body has delegated that authority to you. So that's why we, when planning commissioners go to council to speak on behalf of Planning Commission, we ask the commission as a whole to say, yes, we want you to go. Here's kind of the universe of what we're authorizing you to talk about. Yes, please go take our message to the city council. You do have the ability to talk to anyone, counselors, folks, you know, speaking as yourself. So, and as you're, and then also thinking about, you know, are you speaking as yourself in your capacity as a planning commissioner, or are you speaking as yourself in your capacity as a private citizen or whatever? And so just being really clear in those communications, what hat you're wearing and whom you are speaking on behalf of. So that's kind of the legal piece. I think you're asking also a procedural question about whether other commissioners would like to be informed of those communications and stuff. And that's up to the Planning Commission.
Just a point of clarification, we're talking about legislative matters, not quasi-judicial matters.
Always. Yeah, never quasi-judicial, just to be very clear. No, that's off limits. So yeah, it would purely legislative. You all have some-
Other thoughts?
Chris has his hand up.
Oh, you know, I'm going to get better at this. Since I got this new machine, all my hands have turned light pink. That's my excuse. All right. There's a whole bunch of hands up. I'm sorry. So I'm going to go for Commissioner Fragola.
So I personally do not feel the need for my fellow planning commissioners to keep me updated on conversations that they might be having. I'm more concerned that we are falling within the prescribed measures of the law and any city guidelines for planning commissions. So I personally do not expect that, particularly since some of us may not only have professional interactions, but also potential other types of potential relationships with many types of elected officials. I don't think we're only talking, I mean, we wouldn't necessarily even be talking about city councilors, right? We could be talking about state representatives. So I think what's important is that we're making sure we're not violating any state statutes.
Commissioner Ramey.
So for me, the one-on-one issue, that's something that we're all doing probably occasionally, some of us more than others. And honestly, I don't want to be, I don't need to be informed of those or know about them. I think it's a small town. It's going to happen, particularly as we get out, if we ever get out, it's going to happen a lot more. But for me, it's slightly different. And I think it's just more of a personal request. I don't want to obligate anyone to do it. But if it's convenient and you're testifying to the council during open session times, and you could just drop a sentence or two that says, hey, I went and this is what I said, because we report to the council. And so understanding what they're hearing from members of the commissioner and as sophisticated as they are in their listening techniques, I think it's difficult for them sometimes to sort out what sort of official stuff is coming to them versus what someone said to them. But I don't think we need to obligate people to that. But to me, it's a matter of, it's kind of a courtesy, because I don't want to hear, if I could, I'd rather not hear about it later. It's sort of awkward to find out, well, wait, another commissioner came and said this to us. So but I don't know that it needs to get to the level of bylaws. To me, it's just more of a courtesy. And frankly, when I testify, I've written it all out anyway. So it's easy for me just to drop it in an email and say, I went to council last night, and this is what I said. But I don't think it needs to get to the level of this is what's required or bylaws. So that's kind of how I feel about it. If possible, it'd be nice to know.
ask a follow-up.
Commissioner Edwards.
Sorry, thank you. So Chair Ramey, I don't have an issue with that, but I will say I no longer hold a position professionally that I am required by my job description to testify on just about everything, but that actually was the case at one point. And I know Commissioner Borowski is also a regular attendee and weighs in regularly. So I just want to point that out because those are circumstances that come up when somebody, if they wear a different hat, that is, they're representing not even themselves in, you know, in this case, I was representing an organization. And I may on occasion do that in my current capacity. So I guess I would just say I wouldn't have a problem with that, but it is just one of those things that it could get overwhelming, to be honest. So I just want to flag that issue. You know.
Okay. Commissioner Isaacson.
Yeah, I'm with Commissioner Fregel on this. I don't know that this is something that you could necessarily, at least with us, come up with a policy that would orchestrate when you could, when you couldn't. It would be very messy. I trust our body to know where the line is. I think we all know internally where the line is, and when we're crossing it and when we're not. I would never have a problem with hearing that Commissioner Edwards talk to the city council. And I would know that she would know where the line was, and that if she was approaching it, she would let the other parties know where that is. My only issue, or my only thing that I can think of, is the public at large, right? The public at large doesn't necessarily know that. And so there is, you know, one of those Caesar's wife has to be above reproach kind of things, right? So I would just simply, if it were me testifying or saying something, I would just simply make a disclaimer. My views are my own. They're not on the behalf of the Planning Commission. Here's my testimony. That's how I would do it. But I don't think we need to legislate that, because I think if we're going to go down that road, Lauren's time is going to be very drawn out to draw up whatever that language is going to look like. And we're going to need more time than the time we have allowed tonight.
Well, I'm going to carefully jump in. I've given this a bit of thought since last time. I felt like I went a bit far last time, suggesting people should let us know, and I expressed that back to you all in an email. I have found myself thinking about it, particularly in the context of HB 2001, thinking about it quite a bit, and it comes down for me. It's all about giving testimony to the city council as a planning commissioner, not doing it on behalf of the planning commission. But if I go there and I talk to them about HB 2001, they're going to know I'm a planning commissioner, you know. And I've been thinking about that, and I've become kind of comfortable with it. I'm not sure I'm going to do that, but I've become comfortable kind of with the idea. And maybe Lauren can kind of correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the idea of going to the council, not on behalf of the planning commission, but speaking as a planning commissioner and giving them some input, giving them some opinion about something that I'm really working on in a tremendous amount of detail. And I'm working on it as a commissioner on a body that they've appointed. I think that my input or others could be helpful to them. So I think the only thing I'd want to be careful with, and I think as Commissioner Isaacson said, or as others have said, you want to be perfectly clear. You're not speaking on behalf of the commission. I think I just always want to be sure I'm not putting myself in a position where anyone's going to think they get confused that maybe I am speaking for the commission. So I think it always there needs to be a really bright line. You just need to be clear about it. But I've kind of come around to thinking it could actually be pretty beneficial. It might be pretty helpful in the whole context of things, which is probably something some of you have already learned. Commissioner Borowski.
Thank you. One thing that I would like to mention would be going back to when we testify on behalf of the commission as a whole. So we're sending a representative to the city council to give testimony. There have been, and it's laid out in those bylaws, but there have been times, not so much with this commission, or I would say even the commission in the past few years, where there was a significant minority view. There were 4-3 votes on some legislative things that went forward in the past. And if that were the case, I would acknowledge, because there is an acknowledgement in the bylaws that says, you know, if asked, you can speak to the minority case. So if it was a divided commission and I were testifying, what I would say was there was a minority view, but the commission voted on that and lead the city council to perhaps ask more about the minority position, because they're the final arbiters. And if there's a strong minority opinion, if it's a 4-3 vote, it's a lot of times it has significant thought behind it on the minority side. And so if in those instances, if I were testifying to the city council, I would want them to know that there was that and allow them to ask that question. I wouldn't put it forward unless asked, but I think that that's something that's important going forward if it is a contentious issue.
I guess I would just
other comments? Yeah, Lauren.
Commission could choose to authorize a minority representative to go and speak as well. So you could have someone speaking on behalf of the majority and someone speaking on behalf of the minority. I believe that there have also been times where the minority position was provided to council in writing. So there are a lot of different options for the commission in deciding who goes and what gets communicated to the city council. From a legal perspective, the thing that I would want, and we've said it a bunch of times, everyone to be thinking about is just thinking about which hat you're wearing, being really clear with the listeners about which hat you're wearing and what your authority is within that scope. And then, as Alyssa pointed out, you know, obviously, if we're talking about a quasi-judicial decision, then you have the whole ex parte communication and other things. So we're not talking about that in this discussion.
Okay. Okay. I don't see any other hands. So I guess we'll leave it at that, and we'll move on to buddies and liaisons. I would like to make a quick comment about this one, very quick, and I'll probably ask John Borofsky. Well, I know he's aware of it. I've assumed all along, and I think I'm probably accurate in this, that this suggestion is that planning commissioners and counselors become buddies. And I think that's an interesting idea. I was wandering around out in the hills this morning, and it occurred to me that I actually didn't know that for sure. I was thinking back when I was on the budget committee, the protocol there were 8 counselors and 8 citizens, and the protocol there when you were a citizen member is that you had a buddy, and it was an executive manager at the city, and it could be the assistant city manager, it could have been the director of public works and so on. And I just would, I'm not really suggesting this, but I just would kind of throw it into the mix and say, over the time I was on the budget committee, I found that to be extremely beneficial and helpful. So it's just a comment. I guess I want to throw it open for discussion on, I guess, what people think about it. I assume the proposal, again, is basically commissioners and counselors, and kind of see what people think and how we might want to take that forward if there's interest. Not sure the order these went up. I'm going to call on Commissioner Edwards.
A question on that topic, because my understanding, and I'm not opposed to the buddy system, but my understanding is that there's generally a commissioner or a counselor that sits on most of the, you know, there's always the liaison from the council that sits on various boards and commissions and whatnot. The planning commission is sort of this exception, and I think I recall that it had to do with the quasi-judicial nature of some of the topics that we cover, and so we don't have somebody from the council that sits and as that liaison role. Is that correct, Lauren?
Yes, Commissioner Edwards, I think it was partially that, the idea that some, although not many, but some of your decisions, or rather recommendations, are quasi-judicial in nature and would go to the council for final decision. And so the liaison wouldn't be able to participate in those pieces. But also, I think that a number of the boards and commissions in their kind of operative documents call for a council liaison, and planning commission does not. Though the way that the code and the state statutes are drafted, it's all community members, and there are specific pieces about who can and cannot serve on planning commission, and there's no mention of a counselor being a voting member of planning commission. Could counselors attend? Probably, but we need to think about the quasi-judicial piece, or not probably, definitely they can attend planning commission meetings, but within the caveat of the quasi-judicial piece. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
That's helpful. So just as a follow-up, I would be supportive of that, but I actually think that it would almost be council's. I would almost defer that decision to council. Do they find value in having this ongoing relationship with individual members of us that they can ask questions or whatever? I'd be fine to have that system, but I do think that it should be potentially maybe initiated from them, or at least we need to maybe ask council if they feel like that would be something of value, because we would not, as Lauren alluded to, we wouldn't be able to discuss a lot of the more quasi-judicial things in nature. And so I would, they may ask us that, but not realize like, oh no, actually we have, that's quasi-judicial, we can't talk about that. So there might be kind of confusing, but.
Commissioner Borowski.
Thank you. I think that getting council to buy in on that, you might get some counselors to buy in, and others. I'm just being real world. Some other ones probably wouldn't have the interest to wanting to do it. However, getting back to what Commissioner Basin said, it may be advantageous for the planning commissioners to have a buddy within the planning staff. Like I said, the budget committee had it wasn't with counselors that were our buddies, it was department heads. So maybe, if I had if Alyssa was my buddy, and I had a question about something, I would have her phone number, I could call her. That's always available anyways. But if you made it a kind of a standing thing, every couple of months you would call or whatever, that may help newer members get associated and be less, be more likely to ask questions that would help them make good decisions. So that might be something that could be brought up at the planning staff level. But as far as the city councilors, yeah, it'd be great if we had them. But to be honest, they're very busy. They're unpaid volunteers like us. They do sit on a lot of boards and commissions, more so than us. And to ask them to do another one, I think might be problematic.
Alyssa,
You're muted.
Dang it, I just said a whole lot. I was just gonna say that when I think when this discussion first came up and it got put on the agenda, there's a lot of different forms it can take. It can take where, a counselor sat in as a liaison to you all, or it could be that you each have a counselor as a buddy and that you meet with them, on occasion and talk to them about what's going on with the Planning Commission. In Springfield, they actually I talked to one of our staff who's familiar with what's going on over there, and they have a city councilor who does attend the Planning Commission meetings, and then their Planning Commission actually split up the council meetings and go. They each they rotate and attend or watch council meetings. The staff buddy is also an option. And I think we'd have to think about, who to assign who. And yes, right now I think I'm everybody's buddy and I wouldn't mind spreading that around. So, so those are kind of the different options you can be thinking about, how to best be able to communicate with council, which one of those would work best. Maybe, who knows? So there you go.
Thank you. Commissioner Fragola.
Didn't the Planning Commission and the City Council used to have a liaison or a buddy system set up?
It has happened in the past. I mean, it has happened. It's been a while since we've done it that way. And sometimes some of them meet a lot more often and some of them never meet, but that is definitely something that could be set up.
I get what Commissioner Borofsky is saying is that we're all individuals who attend a lot of meetings and unpaid volunteers. And I wouldn't want to add another meeting to city councilors' plate by asking them to attend planning commissions. They're always welcome to come, and sometimes they do come, and that's great. However, I do think there is a need for an ability to increase access and communication based on the fact that there is misinformation that targets the city council, and there's the potential for that to increase. And, I have a relationship with some people who will sometimes reach out to me and just be like, what was that about? Or can you provide some clarity or context on that? I know others do as well. And I think that could be useful to some of the city councilors. And Commissioner Borofsky is correct. There may be some who have no interest in doing that, but it could be useful, and it could be a way to, I think, potentially both de-escalate and decrease potential polarization around issues. It could be a way to provide a good level of communication. I mean, we already have started having a joint meeting, which wasn't happening when I first joined the Planning Commission, or at least hadn't happened for a while. And that has been hard to schedule. And I don't get the idea that they're not interested in having communication. It's hard, right? And, maybe just like if we had a staff member that we know we can call, if they have a planning commissioner that they know they can call or send a quick email to, they might just feel they might be more likely to do that on occasion. And then there might be some who want to meet on occasion. So I don't think it's a bad idea to try out.
Other thoughts? I'm sort of wondering how to take it forward, or if there is collective energy here to do that. It sounds like there's some interest.
So maybe it's something that could be discussed at a future joint meeting, or maybe it's something that could, be present. I mean, I wouldn't want to put people on the spot, but, maybe there's an opportunity for Alyssa to reach out to someone who might have a sense, but it might be something that we bring up at our next joint meeting just to explore.
Okay, that's an idea. I was also thinking, for what it's worth, as you were talking, whether it made any sense for a couple of us to meet offline and talk about it a bit more and see if there is a proposal that could be put together. So something like that might work. Also, the idea of having something we put together where we share it with them at a joint meeting is a good idea.
I think that maybe reaching out to the mayor and having the mayor broach it with the city councilors might be an appropriate way to bring it down the chain. I don't know. That's one way.
Other thoughts? I think I would like to suggest, if there are a couple of people who are interested in talking about this a bit, and maybe putting something a little more formal together, whether it's to go to the mayor or have Alyssa talk to the city manager, or whatever that route, or bring it up at a joint meeting, maybe to flesh that out a little bit. I mean, it's either that, or I guess we sit here tonight and we try to figure out which option we want. We can do that.
Sorry.
Any thoughts? Thank you.
I'll offer. I guess I'm kind of torn, because I feel like if council is really interested on an ongoing communicative relationship with individual members and whatnot, I would be absolutely happy to entertain that. But I also think that sometimes it's issue specific. And I think we kind of know sometimes when those things are happening, when we're seeing a lot of activity happening in the chatter, and we know that there are perspectives being shared that might not necessarily be things that we've had the opportunity to deliberate over, and that's happened. But I guess I'm almost thinking there's either an issue specific type of conversation. And I think, when we testified a couple weeks ago to council, I think that was the way we chose to handle, our framing that conversation for them, and where us as a commission where our thinking was on the topic of House Bill 2001 and the need for and on that and whatever else. But I don't know. I guess I just don't know that I want to be meeting for the sake of meeting if there isn't really something that's rises to the level of needing some additional clarification or context. Because I think that's sometimes what I hear is council saying, well, they need to understand whether or not information was available to us as we were going through our decision-making process that it maybe appears to be new information. So then it gives them the they sometimes feel like, oh, well, maybe we need to start over because Planning Commission didn't have the opportunity to examine this idea or whatever else. And I think that's fair, but I also think we can address it as that happens. So just a thought. I just, like I said, I don't want to just be having meetings and feeling obligated if there's really nothing that we on an ongoing basis need to be covering, but happy to go with what the group thinks.
Well, I want to jump in briefly with an opinion. I think it's a good idea. I guess I want to say when it comes right down to it, for me personally, I'm not having a lot of energy around it. I think there are several of us who have relationships with one or more counselors. I think that has a purpose. It works well when it needs to. And I think, as Commissioner Edwards said and others have said, I mean, there's certain avenues that we have available to us to communicate with them. And not to discount everything that's been raised about doing it. I don't know. I think everybody is busy. So I'm kind of not falling in I just don't have a lot of energy on this particular issue. Commissioner Isaacson.
Yeah, so in one of my former worlds, there was a lot of a similar need for this. And we call it Tiger Team. It's a pretty universal accepted term for people who are not familiar with it. But it seems like this is kind of what we're talking about, is when we're working on a fairly large project of which there is multiple divisions, in which case this is not a division, but multiple groups of people working on the same topic. If we were to basically create a system by which, when the need warrants it, to kind of echo off of Commissioner Edwards' topic and statement, is, for example, HB 2001, right? So this is a large, beefy topic that is going to involve both our bodies significantly over a very long period of time, as opposed to just kind of a one-off, that we have a liaison from their group and a liaison from our group that can kind of meet up and hash out questions that they have, questions that we're going to get back from them, so that we're better prepared to enter our own deliberations or our own process, and by extension, their own process and procedure in a more efficient manner. And we have the team already assembled so that we just activate it whenever it's needed. And then we as a group decide, is this a topic that we think is going to be something we want to activate the Tiger Team, or do we want, is it really something that's going to be siloed within our own group?
Okay.
And I'm just going to chime in on one more thing. I think that the whole idea is that we want to, it's not just buddies, liaisons, it's communication, getting our views to the city council in whatever fashion that is, whether it's testimony, whether it's buddies, whether it's an annual report or whatever. And the thing that I think would be helpful to push this over the edge is letting the city council know how important our job is under state planning goal number 1. We're the citizens involvement committee for a major, for the number 1 goal of land use planning in the state. So, that to me would help bolster, the communication back and forth, because we're the conduit that the statewide planning goal goes through.
Thank you. Commissioner Fragola, did I see your, maybe not.
I just wanted to say that it seems like there's not a lot of energy to move this forward, and I'm fine with that. But where I have seen us be successful is where we've chosen to address council more officially, like we did with the memos and the letters, and having Chair Ramey attend as well as other commissioners. And that seems to be a useful model for us at this time. So I hope that we continue to use that model and continue to communicate how we're thinking about things directly to the commission, especially on these high profile issues. But I think I'm echoing Commissioner Beeson that this may be a good idea, but it doesn't seem like something that there's a lot of energy around to move forward.
Thanks. Well, I'm going to suggest we leave it there at this point. See if maybe that's kind of the sense of the discussion at this point. And maybe at some point we'll want to raise it again, but maybe we'll leave it at this point. We'll move on. I'd like to, just in the interest of time, annual report, including suggestions for new initiatives developed by the Planning Commission. I'm going to ask somebody, Commissioner Borofsky, I see your hand.
Yeah, this was one that I put on there. And I think it's an opportunity for the commission, again, to communicate with council. Tiffany knows this, and other people who attend a lot of council meetings. A lot of the other boards and commissions give regular annual reports to the city council on what they've been working on. Sustainability Commission does it, Police Commission does it, the Toxic Rates to Know Commission does it. And it's actually codified in Chapter 2 that the commission shall make and file with the council a report of all transactions as required by law, which is a little bit vague. You know, what are our transactions that are required by law? But I see it as a way to get in front of the council, because I've seen the other commissions give their annual reports or give reports, and then the council listens to them, hears them, and sometimes gives direction to staff to move forward with policy decisions on them. And I believe that the Planning Commission can do that as well. There's things that I'm passionate about that are in the code as well, you know, to cooperate with private developers and public agents in providing an adequate supply of housing for low-income families. Perhaps there's a way that we could come up with an idea that might be helpful to the city council that would help further that duty and power that we have. And so I think it's important that we do an annual report and have a work session and say, well, this is what we've worked on in the last year. And these are some of the issues that we see coming forward that may need energy and direction from the city council. I just see it as an opportunity to get some of the things that we've been working on and we hope to work on in the future in front of city council in a regular fashion.
Commissioner Rainey.
So that makes a lot of sense to me. And I think that generally the idea is wonderful. You know, here's what we did. We're not actually telling them. I mean, if you're in an organizational structure, sometimes you're explaining to your superiors how you spent their money and what you did during the last year, but that's not what we're doing. We're carrying out a responsibility to advise them. And so here's what we did last year in carrying out our responsibility. And during the course of our work, we discovered these X number, maybe it's 2 or 3 things, which in our opinion, if acted upon, could drastically improve processes and improve the status of the community as a result. Now, having said that, and having written these reports, this is quite a burden for staff. So I know that we can't just sort of walk into it thinking that it'll happen overnight, that staff has to somehow carve out the time to do this. But I don't know how else you continue to work without sort of examining where you are, what you did and what you want to do, and what's in your way of doing the things you want to do. And it seems to me that that's a sort of an annual moment where you stop and look around and see where you are. and then talk to those who can help you get to where you think you should be. So I think it's a great idea. I'm just a little nervous about whether we have the capacity at the staff level to carry it out.
I would echo that. I also think it's a good idea, and I think the content of it certainly is important. It feels like that would be a bunch of work to figure out what the structure of it looks like and what goes into it, but it feels like it might be the easier part than actually, I think as Commissioner Ramey's saying, getting it done. I think we need to hear from the planning director, and it's for me, it feels like one of those things where I'm kind of into subcommittees, I guess, tonight, where maybe a couple of people could talk to it seems like a couple of people could be designated to do this and to work with the staff to at least figure out if it can be done. And then maybe on an ongoing basis, that's sort of the way it would get done. But it would take some time from the staff to help put this together. I don't know if Alyssa is having any reactions or?
No, I'm in agreement with both. I mean, I think it is a good idea, and I have concerns about our capacity to carry this out. So, you know, in the past, and there's been different iterations, we've done a planning division annual report and been very consistent with it for that very reason. I mean, there may be possible to kind of weave the two together as well. Because you don't touch everything we do, and sometimes you only touch certain pieces of the project. So I guess it kind of depends. If it's what the Planning Commission did, it may not be as big of a lift as opposed to, I mean, it's still going to be work, no doubt about that, but it may not be as big of a lift as compared to, you know, an annual report of everything the planning division did. So it kind of, I mean, I think it kind of depends on what you're imagining this looks like as well.
Yeah, I think some people need to
talk how
about
detailed.
Yeah. Commissioner Borowski.
Thanks. So a couple things. I'll give an example of one of the things that I feel a planning commission could do, but before that, you know, we've gone through appeals here, and you guys have quasi-judicial appeals, and we've looked at refinement plans and these types of things. And when the word "shall" comes up, you know, Lauren will back me up on this, but when it says the planning commission shall make and file a report with an annual report with the city council, and it's codified in chapter 2, to me, that kind of sounds like if I were at an appeal hearing, I would say that needs to be done. That's just me. And I'm backing away from this commission in 3 weeks, but that's the way that I read that as something that's codified. Now, the second half of this, when we were talking about including suggestions for new initiatives developed by the Planning Commission. So I'm going to just throw one out there that there's the city of Eugene has a fund to help offset system development charges for low-income housing, right? You can apply for an SDC waiver if you're building low-income housing, which goes to another part of our codified duties. That fund has not been adjusted in the last 20 years. It's a certain percentage, and it doesn't fund enough of the projects that are going forward. So for me, in my annual report, I would say perhaps the city council could look at the SDC waiver fund and see if there's a way to bolster that going forward. That would be a suggestion, because that would help us build low-income housing, which is something that is one of our duties. So that's the type of thing that I could see coming from the Planning Commission to the city council to say, hey, look at this. And they could say, we don't have the money to do that right now, but those are the types of ideas that I would hope could come out in this expanded report.
So if I may, I will just say, Commissioner Borowski, that you are correct. The first half of the sentence in code section 2.340, Planning Commission Annual Report, says the commission shall make and file with the council a report of all transactions. But the second part says, as required by law. So the question is, if it's required by law, then you have to do it. What is required by law? And to differentiate a little bit, maybe between Planning Commission and some of the other boards and commissions, Police Commission, I believe Sustainability Commission, some of the other boards and commissions have a code requirement where they need to provide an annual work plan, and that work plan must be adopted by the city council. So they go to the city council on an annual basis to get that thumbs up on their work plan. Planning Commission doesn't have that requirement. So that may be another kind of difference. I'm not saying that certainly Planning Commission could choose to provide an annual report. That's great. But I'm not sure that the code requires it unless another law also requires it.
When do
Thank you.
other commissions and boards give their reports? I mean, annually, like, is there an annual cycle that they give them?
Actually, I think it's usually by the end. The Police Commission and the Civilian Review Board and Police Auditor's Office are giving theirs at the end of June. So that seems like it must be on a fiscal year. I'm not sure when the Sustainability Commission does theirs. Another thing I would mention, and it's the next topic, but I think these blend together, is that an annual meeting would be an opportunity to provide an annual report, and maybe it'd be a little bit easier to do in a PowerPoint presentation and with the agenda item summary, as opposed to some kind of glossy report, depending on what you had in mind for this. But I think that's a great time for that communication that you're looking for, that FaceTime with council, and an opportunity to share with them the things that you've worked on over the past year and the places where you might have concerns or have suggestions about.
Okay. Commissioner Edwards.
Okay, thanks. So on that sort of general topic, I think one of the areas that I would love to have more structure around, and I think that this kind of feeds it, and whether this is more of a formal work plan or something, but our appropriation by council as the citizen involvement committee, I don't see that we do a whole lot of work related to that, other than approve communication plans related to neighborhood planning or whatever else. But I do think that to me is an area that could use some work. And I would love to explore what actually focusing and working to improve our engagement with the community, as far as like the city and decisions that are being made and all kinds of different things. I think that interests me personally as one of the roles that Planning Commission plays. And like I said, I just have never seen us actually really do anything related to that. So I'd love to have some structure around that if others agree that is an area of interest.
Thank you.
We actually did have a subcommittee on public involvement back about 4 or 5 years ago. I think, was Kristen on that, Alyssa, with Bree?
I cannot remember who was with Bree, actually.
Commissioner Fragola. Oh.
I'm supportive of Commissioner Borowski's idea. I think I don't have a clear vision for it. And I could see it being somewhere in between, like this glossy official report and what Alyssa suggested. I would be particularly interested in that second part that he identified, which is the opportunity to amplify issues that could have significantly positive impacts, right? Because like, who else is thinking about that issue that he just mentioned, right? Besides us, and probably a lot of developers, or not a lot of developers, but people who are involved in that affordable housing development. I guess I'd like to suggest that maybe a couple people do get together and flesh this out a little bit more around what might be possible and bring it back to the Planning Commission, because, again, it's seeming like people think it's a good idea, but there's not something solid here. There maybe needs to be, what would it include? What would it look like? When would we give it, more details? And Commissioner Borowski, I know you're leaving soon, but, I think your input would be really valuable.
Commissioner Ramey.
So I'd be willing to work with Commissioner Borowski and others who are interested to, I think the task would be to put together some sort of outline that's outline-ish, that outlines what the document is, maybe has a purpose statement, but then the different sections, so one can begin to see how much work there is to complete each section, what the sections are about, what it covers. So I'd be happy to work with a group of people to bring an outline document back to the commission, and particularly getting Commissioner Borowski before he heads off to the great land of eWeb.
Commissioner Borowski, is that something you're willing to do?
Well, I think that if this had made it in the first cut of our first retreat, probably would have had time to flush it out. I'd be happy to, give input on it and be a resource to it. But to be honest with you, this is June. This is the busiest month of the year for my business. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there's this new track that's about a block and a half away from my restaurant. And there's a bunch of people that are going to be running around that track for about the next 3 weeks. So for me to commit to something like that for the duration of my time on the Planning Commission would be difficult. I would be happy to be a resource for you guys to reach out to. I think at this point, I feel that I've planted the seed, and I hope that you guys will water and fertilize that seed, and it will grow to a beautiful flower that will maybe be a legacy for something that I've done on the commission.
Okay. Do we have others who might be interested in working with Commissioner Ramey? I will say that I have interest in this, and I also think I want to volunteer Alyssa. I think the discussion probably ought to include her, but I would defer to virtually anyone else in the group who wants to do this.
I would be interested. I don't want to, knowing that we can't have a quorum. If there's others that are interested, but I'm certainly interested in formalizing something a little bit more concrete and taking the conversation to another offline or whatever.
Thank you.
And I can add that my idea was that I would actually initiate it and work with Alyssa to get a draft, and then get others, including former Commissioner Borowski. As much as I want to respect his time, if I could get like 10 minutes of his time to look at something and give us some feedback, that'd be great.
Just show up at his restaurant.
So maybe we could go with it that way.
It takes like an hour longer when he's there. Yeah.
So maybe we've got a proposal there that you'd initiate it, and you would maybe run it by a few people, we'd end up with something that's a proposal that could then be shared with the Planning Commission.
And it sounds like I've got the volunteer of Commissioner Edwards and Commissioner Isaacson as readers, at least, and hopefully more active participants.
Absolutely.
And think about nice creative ideas that want to go into it as well. We don't want to just look past. We want to look forward to making the community a better place.
Okay, all right. So I guess we have a plan, and I'm not seeing any more hands. So I think we'll move on to the last, see my clock up there. Annual joint meeting. You know, let someone take the lead on this who's, I guess it's pretty self-explanatory.
I can jump in on this one. I mean, we've
Okay.
about it some already that we've had kind of periodically a joint meeting with I wouldn't call it annual, but we do on occasion have a joint meeting with the city council. It seems like this year in particular, it would be really great to align it with your recommendation, somewhere between your recommendation and their public hearing on middle housing, so that you could actually have that opportunity to speak to them in person about it. We also use that meeting for other things, so I don't know if you would get the full annual meeting feeling out of it, or if that would just become more of a middle housing meeting. But I really think that would be a good opportunity for you all to be able to explain whatever it is your recommendation that you come up with, and to talk about the public involvement, and to talk about the focus on equity and inclusion. And I think you would have their ears and eyes at that meeting. We've also used the meeting to talk about, how to better communicate. And I think that was really successful. And we can point to Clear and Objective, where they remembered the last joint meeting, and Commissioner Borowski specifically, and who said, hey, send it back to the Planning Commission. And they did that. So, I mean, these can be really successful.
Okay. Sounds like we've got a kind of a proposal there.
Yeah, so I can go ahead. I mean, if I can get some head nods that you think it would be great to, okay, I know you want a meeting, but do you want it, if we can get it to align with your middle housing recommendation, does that seem to make sense, at least this particular year?
Well, I believe it does. I definitely think it's a great idea. And I think it would be a matter of finding the date. And then we'd need to spend some time to, get into some detail on the particular agenda for the time and what we want to do. You mentioned a few things which would be good.
Yeah. And
we have an opportunity to meet with the council.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, I'm going to have to go back and look at this, but I think often the chair and the mayor meet to talk about, maybe with staff, but to talk about, the things that they want to cover as well in the discussion. There's usually kind of seated questions or.
Okay. Other thoughts or voices of support or agreement or?
Yeah, I would just say try and get on the mayor's agenda, because it'll be after council break. Council break's coming up here in 3 weeks, but try and get on. What I would suggest would be try and get on, early fall, because that's when all this stuff's going to be kind of running in, and there will be a lot of things, work sessions that are filling up. So put your foot in the door and say, I need a 45-minute work session in early fall.
Are others are in agreement, I'm assuming? Okay. Seeing some head nods. Okay. I guess we'll leave it at that. I think what I'll do, I guess we've gone through these items, and I think what we'll do is turn it over to Alyssa to talk about meeting times and land acknowledgement.
Great. And these fell under your process and operations category, and these were the two I had said I would follow up on. In terms of meeting times, the reason that came up is because of accessibility. And I know some of you have tried to recruit other folks to, apply for the Planning Commission, and that's been challenging because of our Monday daytime meetings. And so I did two things. One, we did some research on other local boards, commissions, and elected bodies in terms of when they meet, mostly in the evening, as you saw on that. Mostly at the beginning of the week in the evenings. And then I also did a poll of all of you except for Borowski in terms of what your best availability is. And not surprising, Tuesday evening is for everybody, hands down. That was the only night that 6 people picked as being available. So Tuesdays seems to be your best night, which is good because Monday's already council anyway, and that makes it challenging for staff and you and council and the public. So I think we'll stick with Tuesdays. The question is what to do, moving forward. The other issue that kind of plays into this is right now, when we have virtual meetings, we can schedule them any day. I don't have to look for room availability, and I'm not limited. I don't have to look for room availability, which is great. But someday I imagine we will go back to in-person meetings, and that is a little more challenging because they're like the Human Rights Committee commission meets on Tuesday nights. So that would be a night we'd have to either find a different room because they meet in the same building that we do. So there's just some considerations to make. I know we said we wouldn't move quickly on this. And, the other thing that always comes up is when we have appeals and we need to slide in a bunch of meeting dates to get through deliberations within the state mandated deadline. So just wanted to throw all of that out. Looks like there's some questions.
Mr. Fragola, I'm going to turn the chair duty back to the chair.
Okay.
Okay, and Commissioner Fragola.
So I in terms of meeting spaces, I've been following pretty closely what's happening at the downtown LCC building and what the city is doing there. In addition to creating a city council meeting space, they've also created an additional work session space, which is really, it's a really decent size space. It would certainly accommodate this commission. And so I'm not saying that we have to meet there, but I'm just saying that there are now more opportunities for meeting spaces besides the room that we have historically met in. Right. So there's that. And then I guess I had a question about, I guess the last thing I wanted to add to that was the spaces that are being developed at the Mary Spildy Center are, from my understanding, will be have flex capacity, which will mean that the commission could be in person, but one person could join the meeting remotely, and that they'll also have the capacity for public comment and viewing remotely as well. So the meetings will be a better combination of both digital accessibility and meeting in person. So a lot of exciting things happening coming out of the pandemic. We've learned some things. So my question was, sorry if there's a lot of noise in the background. My question was, based on that survey, were there 2 Tuesday nights that we could meet?
Yeah, I think so. I'd have to pull it back up and let me do that real quick. I'm really glad you brought up the council room because we haven't considered that recently because of, it was really hard to get the Lane County building, except for when we had a really big hearing. So thank you for bringing that up. I will check in with our city manager's office about what they're going to be doing for, the allowances of that room. But you're right, that really and it brings up our options for that. So that's fantastic. Let's see. Oh yeah, every Tuesday got all 6 votes. So the first Tuesday at 5:30, the second Tuesday at 5:30, the third and the fourth. So it sounds like everyone that's currently on the commission that will still be here is available. That is at a date that works best for your schedule.
Commissioner Borowski. Oh, I think you're muted.
Thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Fragola, for bringing up that information. I think that that's something that could go forward. For me, I think getting back to in-person meetings is and this is me personally, I get a lot more out of sitting across the table from somebody than I do in Zoom meetings. Zoom meetings can be productive and easy, and you can wear pajama bottoms if you want to, but I also think that me personally, in-person meetings are where I want to go. So I would, if I were still on the committee, I would want to get to that point. I know that the governor has said that once we reach 70% inoculation of adults 18 and over, which she thinks will be possibly the 21st of June, then social distancing goes away as a mandate from the governor's office. So I think that trying to get it back maybe after this fall or whenever would be a good thing for the commission.
So I think we're drifting a little off topic here, but why not? I'll jump in. So I want to be sure that we don't, waste a good crisis and not learn from it. And my preference would be some in person and some virtual, because the virtual ones they're easier to do, they're easier to schedule. Nobody's commuting downtown in snowstorms to get to them. So, but there's also some value to face-to-face. So I just want to be sure we don't completely abandon the idea of virtual if we can make it work. So Commissioner Isaacson, your hand was up.
It was. It's mostly just to echo what everyone has said. I think Commissioner Fragola's suggestion is great. If we can find a way that more than one person can come in virtually, if that's an option, or if there's an upgrade that we can do somehow, then I think that would be very beneficial. But I think that as we get further along, different commissioners will have different schedules depending on which different parts of the year we're in. And if there are more options to be participatory in that given meeting by being able to tap in or come in person, I think that would be beneficial. And not that I have a preference on pajamas, but if you want to come with them to the in-person meeting, I don't think anybody would object.
Sorry, I can't find, there it is.
Jeez, too clever. I think we were talking about meeting times and accessibility. And I think what we learned from the survey was that everybody was available Tuesday evenings, and then we drifted off into where we're going to meet. So I don't know, Alyssa, what else we need to do with this particular item?
I don't know if anybody else had any comments or questions on that one. Looks like Commissioner Fragola might, and maybe Commissioner Edwards. And then I think we also said we weren't going to change our meeting times quickly, but I think it's something that we can transition towards to have Tuesday nights. We'll also be having a new commissioner starting in July, and so that will be important to make sure that that person is also available moving forward.
Just really quickly, I was just going to say that there's a lot of public meetings that are trying to figure all this out. So I don't know that I think that we're dealing with it at LTD. I'm sure city council's dealing with it. So we might just kind of wait to see what other bodies are doing in the way of allowing for sort of hybrids and different ways that public can participate. And I'm kind of happy to go with the flow. I'd like to see people once in a while, like to wear my yoga pants too. So whatever.
Commissioner Fregula.
Yeah, I would like for us to start moving towards some kind of decision about whether or not we can meet 2 evenings a month based on the outcome of the survey. And I do think it will create some accessibility and in terms of getting a participation on the Planning Commission. And, you know, I don't have the desire to have it happen super fast. I think it's good to keep moving this slowly, but I would like to know that we're moving in a direction.
So I think that's, excuse me, I think that's what I heard. We're moving that direction and we're looking at phasing it. So not next Tuesday, but certainly over the next 6 weeks or so, we'll start moving that way. Commissioner Basin.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in response to Commissioner Fraggle and what I'm ready. I can move there basically now. As soon as we want to go to 2 Tuesdays a week in the evening, that would be fine, and we can move quickly.
All right, I will follow up on that follow-up. And I know we already have some meetings scheduled through July, so it probably won't happen immediately. And again, it will need to talk to the new commissioner as well and make sure that those dates still work, because they've applied based on the Monday, Tuesday dates that you're currently meeting. So, but we will move towards that. I could see us being there by fall. I think that's something we could definitely accomplish. And then if we're done with the meeting time, I will jump over to land acknowledgement. So that was something else I followed up on. As you may know, the council often starts a meeting with a land acknowledgement. That is actually an interim land acknowledgement statement. The local government's still working with the tribal governments to come up with not just a statement, but actually meaningful, actionable work as well, because as you might expect, that a statement's not going to get you enough. It's a starting point, not a stopping point. And so I did have a conversation with our HR and I staff about, what your interests were, and that you wanted to, make sure that this was meaningful and you weren't just up there reciting something. And so they recommended a 30-minute training with a local person who actually we just recently hired to work at the city. So it kind of works out for us. So that is currently scheduled for July 13th. So after the new commissioner starts as well. That's an evening meeting too, by the way. And so you will get kind of a land acknowledgement 101 at that meeting. And then you can move forward in using the city's interim land acknowledgement statement from there on out.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. That was something that was important to me, and I wasn't sure why we hadn't already done it. So I'm glad we're moving forward, and the training is absolutely essential. I don't want to do something that's just reading yet another script. I want to be understanding what I'm doing, and it sounds like we'll be progressing. It's just a placeholder. So that's all very good news. Thank you. Commissioner Fregula.
Yes, I'm very excited about implementing that. Thank you for following up on that. I'm also curious, do we know who our new planning commissioner is?
No, but I'll move into my items from staff and let you know that, so they interviewed 2 folks, maybe last month, maybe the month before. Turns out one of them wasn't eligible because of, I think I told you this, because we can't have more than 2 people in the same profession, and we have 2 architects on the board or on the commission. And so they are interviewing a few more people on June 14th. I don't know how many people and I don't know who. And then later that evening is actually the appointment. So we will know on June 14th who your newest commissioner is. That's right around the corner, actually. That is next week. Okay. Whew, this month is going fast. And then in terms of what your next meetings are for June, we've got you back-to-back Mondays on the 14th, 21st, and 28th to go over the middle housing draft code language. Right now, those are 2-hour meetings. We're going to send out a poll to see if there's any availability for you all to extend any of those meetings, because we know like how much you like to dig into draft code. So worried that 6 hours isn't going to be enough considering the robust amount of code amendments here. And then you asked yesterday about the June 15th meeting. We are going to cancel that. We had set that aside for a potential appeal. And while it would be great for middle housing, we have staff conflicts with that evening. So we aren't able to have a meeting on the 15th. So I will send you an updated schedule on that. And I also wanted, I think I pretty much already mentioned this, but council, what I heard today, and I don't know how, if it's official, but council will most likely start to meet in person in the fall, because that's when their new room will be available for them, their new meeting room. And so they're on break until September 8th. And I think the plan is that after that, they would meet in person. It may just be the council in person and then the public attending virtually. I'm not sure. I mean, since it's only June, that hasn't all been worked out, but we're definitely working towards that. And as you know, they're in the new LCC building, which is right across from us, which is actually pretty awesome. So that is all I had on my list for tonight.
Are there any items from other commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Borowski.
Yeah, so just thinking back a little bit, something else came up to mind as far as things that the commission could recommend to the city council. For me, one of the things that I think would be helpful to the commission, to the city, and to the community as a whole would be advocating for more staffing in the planning and development department. The budget is just going through, but I think that that would be something that if we could bring that to their attention, say, we've got a work plan on here that we have been trying to tackle for years and years. I mean, there's things on the work plan, Alyssa, you can attest to this, that were on there before I became a planning commissioner 8 years ago that still haven't gotten taken care of. And that has to do with staffing. And so that would be something else that as a planning commissioner could be advocated for, because it's hard for staff. I mean, staff goes in and makes their best pitch each year when budget things come around, but it's the city council that sets the budget and the budget committee that sets the budget. And, the fire department goes and advocates for fire trucks and fire staff. The police go and advocate for police and staff. And I think that the planning commission could also do that, could go and be an advocate for the great staff that's there and know that there needs to be more of it if it is possible. So that's just something that I'm throwing out here going forward. I think you guys do a great job, but I think you could also use more people.
I agree. And unfortunately, in this budget that's underway, the current proposal includes elimination of one of our urban design positions. So if that was recommended by the budget committee as well. It was a part of the city manager's recommendation, and then the budget committee recommended it. So that will be going to council later this month for a public hearing and then action. But I appreciate your sentiments, because it does feel like there are so many things we want to get to, and then we get something, you know, there's a new state law that we have to implement it seemingly every year. And that seems to, you know, put things, it makes it really hard to get to some really important projects.
Yeah, I'm firing all my bullets that I have in this gun in the last few meetings, you guys. So you're just gonna have to.
What else do you have? What else? What
Oh, I don't know. We'll keep thinking about it.
All right, commissioners, other items for the good of the order, anything else? All right, very good. Thank you for your time this evening. You know, finished up an appeal process and got through our retreat pickups. I feel like we're really gelling as a commission. I can't wait to meet our new member. And we have 3 more meetings with Commissioner Borowski. So let's all enjoy those while they last. So have a good evening, and we'll see you on Monday.